Hello, I'm Hank Fosdick with the Supreme Court in My Hometowns program, and I'd like it if you could give a brief intro into who you are and your connection to Cathy Kuhlmeier v. Hazelwood School District.
Of course. My name is Cathy Kuhlmeier. I was the lead plaintiff involved in the landmark case of Hazelwood v. Kuhlmeier, the decision that came down in January of 1988, and I was the student layout editor involved, and I guess that's basically it.
Okay, what was your role in the Spectrum newspaper, and what do you enjoy most about the Spectrum newspaper program?
I was the layout editor of the newspaper, and I got to use my creative side because I like to do more of the art type things, but I also like to write. So I got to be involved with designing what the paper would look like, which photos would go into it, and then do a little writing on the side. So it allowed me to be creative.
Could you go over where and your initial reaction to the censorship?
When I initially found out about it, we were all pretty upset about it. The advisor that we had loved, Mr. Sturgis, had left, and we had a substitute teacher in, and she had no concept of what was going on. So we went down and talked with Mr. Reynolds, the principal, and asked him what had happened. And he just said, basically, the articles were trash, and they were too mature for an immature audience, so we just weren't going to run that. That was pretty upsetting because we really had put a lot of effort and time into the articles, and we knew they were accurate, and we had source checked, and they would have benefited the student body. So it was frustrating at best.
Thank you. That is all the questions I have for you right now. I will pass the mic on to Lily.
Thank you.
Hello. Right. So why did you choose to participate in this lawsuit?
Because I believed in what we were doing and of trying to help our students, and we thought that it would make a difference.
And who in your personal life was important to the filing of this case?
My mom was probably the driving factor for me, as well as Mr. Sturgis, our advisor. When it initially happened, I went to Mr. Sturgis. I had my one big brave moment of high school, and I snuck out of class, and I called him. And I said, we had just been censored. I said, what do you think we should do? And he said, well, call the ACLU. I didn't know who the ACLU was, but because of my belief in Mr. Sturgis and wanting to always help us to do our best and to be our best, I snuck back into class and I told our classmates what he recommended. And we went home and talked to our parents that night, and my mom asked me if what I thought we were doing was the right thing to do and if it was going to help somebody. And I said, yes, I believe we can be of help. And she said, then you have my blessing. So I will support you through it.
And your mom helped you get through this case?
Absolutely. My mom was an amazing woman and was always an inspiration to me to be better.
Great. That's all for me.
Thanks, Lily. Hi, Henry.
Hello. Is headphones on? Thank you.
Oh.
So, my first question for you today is, what kind of things or people do you have to talk to get ready for that first trial? And just what were your experiences when you were preparing to go into court kind of for the first time?
We talked with the attorneys involved on it. We also talked to the Student Press Law Center when working with the ACLU, and they were really our guiding light as far as giving us instructions of, you really only want to answer questions that are asked, and don't give them more information than what is asked of you, and just be very factual about it and be honest. But being a high school student and a young lady in high school and talking with gentlemen in suits that are much older than you was pretty intimidating. It was a scary process. And with my name being first, I had 4 hours of deposition. So it was a very long and drawn out process for me.
Yeah, sounds like a lot. So this is kind of in relation to this, especially to what the ACLU talked about, but what do you remember in particular about testifying at trial? And are there any particular questions, answers, or just experiences from the trial that stuck out to you the first time?
I think just the entire process of not knowing what to anticipate. They prepped us, but actually being in that situation was intimidating also. Any particular questions that stand out? Not really so much, but it was just making sure that we were being factual about everything.
Yeah, thank you. And then this is kind of, a lot of these are related. This is, what was the most difficult part of the trial for you, for your friends, or for your family in the coming, I guess weeks, months, and years for the progress of the trial?
I think the most challenging part was being made to feel like I wasn't a good kid. I really had prided myself on being an outstanding student, much like what you guys are, with working to do the right thing, to be involved, to be an example to other students of doing the right thing. So I was in honor society and marching band and thespian and, obviously journalism, but of just doing the right thing and wanting to be involved on things. So when classmates started being kind of cruel and picking at me of, well, why are you painting our school in this bad light? Or particularly Mr. Reynolds would follow me to classes. I have very vivid memories of being in my chemistry class with Mr. Moore, and Mr. Reynolds would look over. We didn't have actual walls in our school. We had movable walls, so it could be kind of reframed however you wanted. But he would look over the wall every single day I was in chem class and say, look at Mr. Moore. And he would say, she's here. Can you leave her alone? She's not a bad kid. So things like that were kind of made high school a little more unpleasant than what it should have been for me. And as that the media grew throughout the process of it, it was intimidating for that as well because, most people aren't, unless you're a celebrity of some fashion, which is by far not me. It's an unusual circumstance to be thrust into the limelight, and I'm not that girl. I'm that girl that is more of the wallflower to stay in the shadows of things. But I felt passionate about what we were doing, and the message that we're trying to share with our high school students is to consider your decisions before you act on things. That I wanted to make a difference and help somebody.
This is related to part of your answer. Did you feel that students were supportive of you, other students were supportive of you, or were less than supportive as you were, going through this process?
I think, Henry, looking back at it, it was kind of a mix of maybe 50-50. Of some were super supportive of it. They were like, I can't believe you're doing this. This is so cool. Some of them were like, would you shut up? But I had the opportunity over the summer to attend, my 40-year class reunion, again, because I'm old. But it was cool to be able to go and do that. And for students that were maybe didn't understand it, or maybe were some of the ones that were more cruel to me at that point, coming up and saying, I'm so proud of what you did. I get it now that I'm an adult, now that I've raised my own children. I understand what you're doing, and I'm so impressed with what you did and had the foresight to take on during your high school career. And all I could say to them was that it wasn't anything that I considered, above and beyond, like Call of Duty or what have you. It was just having a little brave moment of courage of wanting to make a difference, to stand up and help my classmates, because we had a pregnancy problem in Hazelwood, and I can't imagine what it would be like being a pregnant young lady in high school, or a guy with the thought of having a baby on the way and what that is potentially like. But it's about making the choices. And that's what we wanted to talk about, is that consider what you're doing before you act on it, or before you consider running away with that impact. What does that actually look like? And is that really the best thing for you?
Thank you. My next question is, what doubts, worries, or second thoughts, if any, did you have when you were getting ready to go into that first trial, into the district trial?
I think it was just a fear of could the repercussions potentially be. Little did I know what was brewing at that point in time, because shortly after all of the initial testimonies were given, we were asked to appear on the Phil Donahue show, which in retrospect now is the Oprah of the 80s. And it was a live TV show broadcast out of Chicago, and Leslie, Leanne, and I got to go. And when we got back to school, I had a personal invitation to visit with Mr. Reynolds, and was threatened to either be, one, suspended, or two, be expelled, because I didn't personally ask his permission to go. So that was a little bit scary, and I think it was just meant as scare tactics to try and take some of the light off of the spotlight that Hazelwood was being cast in.
were there any findings of facts or parts of the decision from Judge Nangle, from the district judge, or I guess all the way up through the Supreme Court, that surprised you, or that you didn't agree with at the time, or that you find that you feel that you don't disagree or that you don't agree with now?
I think there were just some of the topics that should have been brought up and discussed that weren't, and it also rolled through and was evident into the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to pass it off to Ruthie for our last question or two. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Henry.
In what ways did your involvement with the case impact your life at the time?
I think at the time it was just a matter of finding the courage to continue to push through it, because it would have been really easy to back out and run at any point in time. But it was shaping who I was becoming and who I am now.
Was there any effect on your life at the time from being named the plaintiff? And was that after the case as well?
I think the effect of it, again, goes back to shaping who I am, because it has encouraged me to always try and do a little more, to be the change, to be a difference, to be better each day, and to also encourage my kids to be that same type of person that are now looking back at them as adults. I think that has impacted them of who they want to be also.
And then how has having your name tied to the case made an impact on your life as it kind of follows you throughout?
I think the biggest thing about that is that it has continued to keep me in the spotlight. And it is something that for me has been a blessing, because I do get to share my story and tell other students or whomever about what I did experience and why it maybe wasn't always the right thing of what I was experiencing. But it also tells kids that you matter, that you can be the change, you can be a difference. But it is also encouraging, hopefully, to them to become passionate about things that matter to them, and to try and to help others as well. And I think as a human, that's all that we can ask for, is to be a little bit kinder to each other each day. So I think it's just been very shaping to who I am. I want to always help the ones that are maybe less fortunate. That what can I do to be a better person to them?
What advice could you give to other students who are experiencing the same kind of censorship that you experienced?
I feel so often that high school students feel, I'm just a kid. What difference do I make? And it's easy to self-censor. So kids are just rather to be that wallflower and stay in the background rather than standing up and speaking up about something. So my message to everyone is to stand up and make a difference, because you have no idea how impactful you are, and change starts with one person. And when you have just that tiny bit of courage and use that to want to tell others about something, they don't always necessarily have to agree with you, but if you have the courage just to tell your opinion and want to help someone make a difference, that's how it starts. And change builds upon others going, yeah, you know what, you're right. I agree with what you say. What can we do to help you to make whatever situation different and better?
So as you've been around the country educating others on some of these issues about censorship, what lessons have you learned about just writing or students or anything in general?
It's that censorship is still happening. It happened to my own son, and the way that everything mirrored what happened to me is very uncanny. But it is something that kids need to talk about. And if we can start writing letters and talking to legislature, have parents talk to legislature to make the difference, then maybe we can start getting more states to pass new voices laws, and just continue to encourage the kids to talk about things that matter to them, because ultimately that's what matters, is that understanding that you matter. And don't accept everything that everybody always says to you as being the gospel truth, that you can find ways to constructively have conversations with individuals. And we don't always have to agree on everything about it, but if we can come to an agreement that it's okay to disagree, but let each other be heard, is so important. There's always two sides to every story.
Thank you for your time today. We appreciate this interview.
Thanks for the opportunity.